They run towards the final 2 furlongs, and Wonderful Tonight has taken off on the outside. The filly takes over under William Buick from Hookham, has breezed past him.
Call between horses, Thundering Blue, still Ella Calm inside the final half, but challenges here. Baroque on the inside with Thundering Blue, who's lashing home on the outside. They race up towards the line, Thundering Blue.
A very warm welcome to a Barstewards special. This is the Trainer File, where joining us tonight, myself and John Lang, is the multiple Group 1 winning trainer, David Menuisier.
Good evening, everybody. It sounds very pompous, but yeah.
yeah. You need no introduction. Obviously, you've trained the super Group 1 filly Wonderful Tonight, Dancer Terrier that won in Germany, the Group 1 Von Baden. No, or was it in Munich?
Yeah, Munich. Großer Dalmer Bayerisch.
Yeah, I couldn't pronounce it, but so I just used anything in Germany.
Grosser von something, yeah.
Grosser Von Baden. And Thundering Blue, of course, as well, the 30 grey for Clive Washbourne, who's obviously a very prominent owner and a good supporter of you in recent times. Firstly, I mean, this show, we are quite critical and we like critical analysis, if you like. What I wanted to touch on is some praise to start. Your website, dmhorseracing.com. I think it's outstanding.
Really?
Myself and John talked off air. What we liked about your website in particular was the fact that not only do you show your facilities on a map and then with a key to sort of say what they are and what they do, and that's a great touch, but what we like the most are on all your racehorses, there are multiple photos of them all. That's so nice. Just as a racing fan, even if you're not getting a customer into your yard, as a racing fan, to be able to view your horses from different angles, galloping positions, so you can get the physique of them and just get a feel for what they are. I think that's tremendous. It puts many to shame, so congratulations on that.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I was going to revamp it actually this winter because I think it's been online for a fair while and I do find it a little bit boring actually. We have a photographer who comes down the yard every 2 to 4 weeks to take loads of photos for the owners, for the staff as well. They really enjoy having photos of their favorite horses and we do publish some online, yeah. I think the next website will be slightly more exciting with a lot more videos and a bit more interaction, let's say. Yeah.
That's even better because I just think it's seriously good. I enjoy looking at horses. Again, you know, when you go to the sales and you buy a certain type or whatever, I like to see what you've purchased and it's nice to see. Going into your background, David.
Yeah.
You were assistant trainer with John Dunlop. That's right, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, that was my last job, yeah.
Yeah, and before that, you did some work with Richard Mandela and the Head family, learning your trade.
Yeah, that's it. That's where I started. I started with Cricket Head and then Richard Mandela. And yeah, finished here in the UK with John Dunlop.
How did they all differ?
You couldn't really compare any of them, really. I was lucky enough to start with the Head family and lucky enough to meet Alec. This was tremendous because I come from a racing family, small racing family, you know, in the northeast of France, proper province. Being able to go to Paris was like a dream come true. To be able to start with cricket was just magical, really. And somebody like me, a chance when, I was going from nowhere, really. And it was tremendous. It was fantastic.
The fact that you've worked at a variance of type of trainer. Are French runners trained different?
They are now.
Yeah.
There must be, surely. There's a few jockeys, that keep on telling me that things are not what they used to be. Look, I wouldn't slag them off, but I've spent a few days in Chantilly. It felt really different to what it was 20 years ago, I would say. So it's not all doom and gloom, but I've got to admit that, they probably train a little bit lower than they used to.
You say that out of all your 3 experiences,
in life, you learn by the things you see that are right, but you also learn by default, you also a lot of things that you think, geez, one day if I have a license, I'll never do this. This is pretty shocking or, whatever. You learn by the good things that you see and you learn by the less good things that you see. You probably learn more by trying to learn by default, actually. I think it's important to, when you're in learning process, it's actually important to see what's not working. So when you take on your license, you try and avoid doing the wrong things.
Yeah. So when you were at John Dunlop's, what sort of time was that? I mean, was that in the classics era?
No. Look, it was right at the end. Yeah, I mean, it was the last 6 years, literally the last 6 years.
Right.
I probably provoked his fall, really. No, it was the last 6 years. So look, I mean, we had the likes of Time's Up. Time's Up was the last good one. Beatrice Aurore before that. No real champions, really. Good horses, nothing out of the ordinary. Perhaps it played to my advantage because, when you have lesser quality, you have to be a lot smarter. It takes an awful lot more to train bad horses than good horses,
This is interesting because, regarding training methods, obviously I spied you at Arquana recently. You don't seem to go for a certain sire line or pedigree. Are you buying at the sales physically? Are you looking at them physically and that's your type?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to have a crush, So yeah, I do probably discard a few stallions that I don't really like, but I believe in the female line more than the sire. The female line is much more important, and obviously the locomotion. A horse that walks really well, who has a demeanor, has more chance to make it than a really well-bred horse with no attitude. If you see a woman walking down the street, you know straight away whether you like her or you don't like, and I think it works the same with horses. If you look at 100 yearlings on the day, you will be able to quickly detect the ones you really like to the ones you don't. And the things you like probably won't be the things that your neighbor will like. And that's the beauty of the sport. There's horses for everybody.
Indeed. You're certainly proving your success with your methods. Obviously, you're certainly not a 2-year-old trainer, and you certainly don't train for speed, in essence. You're not after the big, expensive breeze-up buys that break the clocks. But what is interesting, and with horses that have obviously come through your hands, is the development of them. I think it's to be admired. I mean, talking about training methods, do you identify a program for each individual horse?
Yeah, I think you have to as you go along. And that's why we work on small-ish numbers. My aim is not to train 200 horses. I think 60, 70, 80 max is a good number because you can give each horse individual attention and then try and get the best out of each one of them. If an owner wants to send you a horse, you have to do your utmost for them and for the horse. I think if you have too many horses, you can't really do that. You think you can, but you can't really. I would rather be in my shoes than some of the others, really, and try and carry on doing the best we can with what we've got. I come from a very humble background. Dad always used to say, if you're not rich, you have to be smart, and that's what we're trying to be. You try to get an edge on everybody else by trying things, and it's not working too bad for us.
I remember, David, back in one of yours at Nottingham, it was one of your early ones. Is it Slun of Rat?
No, he was the first one. Of course, my parents have bred, yeah.
The reason I took notice, because I knew you'd come from John Dunlop's, obviously a favourite yard of mine for many years, obviously back in the glory days and the heydays, obviously from a beautiful part of the world as well. If any of our listeners haven't been down to that area of Sussex, Arundel, is absolutely phenomenal to visit. I can't recommend it enough. It's so beautiful. I mean, if you just go on David's site and look at the photograph, it's very picturesque. Very lucky you are trading down there, I would say.
Yeah.
And the thing for me, with your time at Dunlop's, that's why I was interested in you. And I remember back in Slun of Rat at Nottingham, I think he won. I think he landed a few bets, I think, from memory.
Yeah, he won a few times there.
He did. And like you say, I think he improved, didn't he, from the Platers mark into a nice horse.
He was my first horse that set foot in my stable when I first started. He's the last horse my parents have bred. I've known his mother, I've known his grandmother, I've known his great-grandmother. I actually did the mating myself of the dam and the grand dam. Yeah, so it was certainly magical to win with him. But I mean, he started off 53 at the top of my head and ended up 89, winning 6 times, I think, in total. So he was the first one, but he was kind of the trademark of what we could achieve and what we achieved all the way through, because, year in, year out, been lucky enough to have 1 or 2 like this.
So tell me, what are your ambitions going forward? Obviously, we know the obvious answers, which would be to possibly train a Derby winner, given your profile and what type of horse you get, I'm sure you would love being a Derby winner or an Oaks winner. Have I got that right?
Hey, look, I mean, the goal is to try and get 1 or 2 really good horses every year if we can and get the best out of them. But I love my handicappers. I think it's fun to play the handicap game. I'm a happy man, really. I don't really envy anybody. If I wish for something, it would be to carry on being myself. I don't have any massive aim. I'm not aiming to be a millionaire. I'm not aiming to be anything else. I'm happy. I'm really happy to run a happy ship. And yeah, I just want to carry on doing this. Have a nice family life with my wife and my daughter. And yeah, obviously it would be lovely to find another horse that take us to the top level and ultimate aims that everybody could have, Derby, DR, that sort of races. Yeah, that'd be fantastic. And also we like traveling. So if we could have a few more travelers the next few years, that'd be fantastic to maybe go back to Australia or America, places like this. Be great.
Yeah. Am I right in saying that also you don't want really massive owners coming in sort of wanting to take over the show kind of thing, or do you?
I mean, massive owners, depends what we mean by that. But thing is, I wouldn't mind having a few horses for them. But if I get a phone call of somebody telling me, look, I'm going to send you 30, I couldn't have them. No, because it's not my thing. And I think it could just upset what I've been building from the start. Started with 4 horses and really not much backup at all from anybody and certainly no money at all. So anything we're building now is very important. And we're still building foundations and we're still living from a month to another. And I think having a big owner with a lot of horses could just upset that. And I wouldn't let this happen.
Interesting. What are you like for stable staff at the moment? Like some trainers, especially up here in the north, are obviously struggling for staff. How do you find it?
We're okay at the moment because my numbers are pretty much the same year in, year out. I don't really vary that much. We have managed to build our core staff over the last few years. Obviously, we will be hiring in the next couple of months. But on the whole, we are not too bad. I'm lucky enough to attract a few French, funny enough, because a lot of them want to leave France and want to come and work in the UK because of the work conditions. They probably like better here than over there.
Wow.
Obviously, it's become quite difficult with Brexit. It used to be much simpler, but things are probably going to get easier in the future, I suppose. I think Brexit was a bit of a trauma, some kind of, power trip for some government. They needed to stand on their position a little bit stubborn, but things will get better with time. So much easier now to travel through the border with horses. So it is getting easier, and I think immigration will get easier as well. So yeah, staff is a massive issue, and I hope the government could help to facilitate things for our industry because we are dead short. If we keep on being dead short, yeah, it will have dramatic repercussions on the future of the industry, I would say. That's also why it's important to remain a smallish stable, to try and avoid having to lose staff every year, or, having a massive turnover or what have you. I think that's why we try and keep sort of familial feel to the place.
How is it for you then in terms of return on investment? So obviously after costs and everything else, would you say it's a struggle at the moment for yourself, or are you getting by quite happily?
Yeah, no, look, things have been tough this year, I would say. I don't know what's the cause really, but everybody's going through it. War in Ukraine, Brexit, cost of everything really. It's mental really. And I find that this year, for some reasons, a lot of clients are a bit slower to pay their bills, which obviously has an impact on our cash flow. So it has an impact on suppliers and maybe forcing suppliers to raise their fees at the same time because it is tough for everybody. No, I mean, I find this in any industry. Maybe the top 5% are absolutely not affected, but everybody else is.
As it stands for 2023, are you concerned, or are you sort of thinking we can get through this in terms of expenses, stroke? Are you going to need to produce another group winner or land some substantial pot to keep the ship alive sort of thing?
You just have to carry on, and you can't look at finances every day because if you do, you don't do anything in life. I think you just have to carry on and focus on your job. And good things will come, bad things will come too, but it's much more important to focus on the good things than the bad things. I'm not Cinderella, but like started with nothing and what have you. If I looked at finances, if I looked at what do we need to do to make a living and what have you, it was like at a cliff from the bottom and having no rope or anything. And frankly, if you do this, you're not going to achieve nothing in life. You just have to carry on, do your best and see what happens. If you don't have this attitude in life, you'll never do anything because you'll just sit on the fence and get worried about things that might happen or might not happen. Like
You seem very chilled out there in a happy place, if you know what I mean.
But you have to be, because you have an awful lot of people that count on you every morning, whether it's your staff, your horses, your family, your owners, everybody, and the punters as well. So if you're not chilled, you can't produce, that's the thing.
Have you always been like this?
Oh, you learn to become like this because you realize that sometimes there is no point stress. You look at the war in Ukraine. Is he going to press the button? Is he not going to press the button? But if you think about it every day, you're not going to do much. One day he might press the button, but if he doesn't, then you would have you can enjoy your life in the meantime.
Well,
I'm loving this positive mental attitude stuff. I think it's really important in these times. And honestly, David, it's refreshing to hear.
The thing is, and it's the same for everything in life, you will have people that will complain about something every single day and whatever. But it's not going to change anything, right? So it's not going to solve the problem or what have you. So if you're that bothered, just go and sort it out. But otherwise, just don't complain and move on. It applies to a lot of topics, really.
I'm going to come to a couple of things now that really brought a smile to my face. And your Twitter account is really good. Brings out your personality as well. When you lost your really good horse, Lionel, from Normandy Stud, from the batshit Philippa Cooper. I loved your tweet. Someone tweeted at you and said, "Oh, why has Lionel gone to John Gosden?" Really puzzled. And you just replied to them and said, "Trainer upgrade." And I just thought, this chap is absolutely tremendous. This is something that we don't get from normal trainers. Some would probably be really bitter, or some would say nothing in reply, or just not even go there. But you just lightheartedly said trainer upgrade. And I just thought, what a tweet that was for one of the tweets of the year for me. That made me chuckle. The Normandy Stud thing, how genuinely did you feel at the time? Obviously, it's a daft question. You're going to be disappointed, aren't you?
It's a big subject. I'm disappointed for the horse to walk out of my yard because people see the good horse and what have you. We see the horse. I mean, he's a companion. He's a friend. He has a character. We got attached to him. And obviously, this is something that is hard. When you've created a bond with a horse, it's a hard thing to see them go. Look, I'm not here to bash anybody or what have you. We know how things go with the owner. So the day she stepped in, we knew that we were on a timer and it needed this to happen for the horse to leave. That's life, Look, we've moved on. I still have some really good horses in the yard. Is the owner much happier now than she was then? I don't know. You need to ask her, really, but it's not blatantly obvious anyway.
Do you have any regrets going to the Curragh?
No, I really don't. It was the right thing to do. The horse won the race at Goodwood, which is a Derby trial. We had the choice between Epsom and Ireland. It was actually a concerted decision between myself, the owner, and the jockey, Jamie Spencer. We took the horse out at the Curragh in the morning of the race. Jamie rode him, actually, to go and have a little canter. We organized for a lead horse to give us a lead. And the horse was absolutely grand. Jamie was delighted with the ground. It was all well. And then the wind started blowing and the ground dried out dramatically. If you look at form of the siblings, Lionel, pretty much all of them have handled quicker ground. And everybody was happy for the horse to run on quicker than soft, I mean, it was genuine good ground, which is perfectly safe. Everybody was there. Everybody was quite happy. The horse didn't really handle the ground. Was there something else at the time? I can't really tell because I haven't really managed to see the horse come out of the race. So, I mean, the horse was sound. He seemed happy, but he left the yard 3 days later. So I don't know if there was another reason why he ran so poorly. I'm sure the horse will be top notch. He's got the right attitude. Probably not the easiest. You need to know him really to get the best out of him, but he's really gone to a really good yard. One of the best yards that's ever trained. I'm sure they'll get the best out of him.
I think you were very unlucky in quite a few ways, really, because as we know, some of fact-finding missions, will they handle that ground? Will they go on it? Whilst it's easy to say after the event, no, he didn't really go on it, I think you were rather unlucky to lose the horse. If you'd have still had Lionel, and I know you don't like looking backwards, you like looking forwards. Let's say he'd have ran okay at the Curragh but not won. What would you have planned for him after that? Would you have found something maybe in France? Or
I think the Ledger was his race. I still can't see why it wouldn't be, because it was never considered. The connections. I think it would have made sense to prepare him for the race and then put him away for your whole season. He was never going to have 10 runs as a 3-year-old because he was still green and babyish and what have you. But yeah, still maintain that it would have been the right thing to do. It's only my opinion, and obviously it wasn't revalued.
like I say, I'd never like to see a trainer that puts their all into a horse and then lose it. Like you say, I mean,
it's business as usual in this game. Huh? And I think it's reassuring for some people to go to one of those yards. They have some horses and they speak well and whatever. I think for a lot of owners, it's reassuring to go to that sort of yard. Look, I'm really lucky to have the owners I have. They're very loyal. They're very nice people. We get on well. They understand where I'm coming from. They understand it's a game of patience. I'm very lucky to have the people I have. Some other people, they just feel more secure in a big setup. It's a strange thing, but some people do work on merit, some people don't. And that's the way it is. It's not uncommon for a smaller yard to lose a horse to go to a bigger one, for this matter.
No, of course. Lionel Normandy stud horses are now with Towser and Slim at Clarehaven in Newmarket. But whilst we wish Lionel well, we do feel a tinge of sadness that you yourself didn't get to pilot that mission.
Of course, Lionel wasn't the only nice horse that you had last year, David, was he? You also had Sir Bob Parker. Let me down in sickening fashion by you not getting him to Epsom. I had a 66-1 voucher for him.
I think Bob is probably my best horse, actually. I felt at the time he was probably above Lionel because he had gears. I was very lucky to have both of them, obviously. Still have Bob taking our time now to get him back to full health.
What was the problem?
He chipped his hind fetlock when he ran in France in the Greffel. The chip was rubbing suspensory branch, his ligament. So we had to take the chip out, treat the ligament at the same time, and those ligaments, they usually come right as long as you give them enough time. He's a big horse. We love him. I was never going to rush him back to do the autumn. He's going back into full exercise now. He's done extremely well physically. He's from a fantastic family of middle distance /stayers by Siuni, which gives him a bit of zip. He's a very exciting horse for the future.
Indeed. And you have to be sort of a little bit excited in a way, because obviously that wasn't his race to sort of turn up and win at Saint Cloud. And yet an Esther has obviously franked the form in spades with what an Esther did in the Irish Champion. So you must be like really thinking, yes, my horse was quite raw still at that point, and he's come back with an injury. And again, it is exciting. So Bob, David, if you get him right, and obviously no pressure to say this, but what would be an early season target for Bob?
The very, very early season target would be Dubai, because I'm trying to get him to spend a few months in Dubai this winter. So, I mean, we haven't really mapped out anything yet, because I'm not going to put the gun to his head. We've done the applications to have him there this winter. Yeah, so hopefully he can run 1 or 2 races there with no specific targets and then hit the ground running when he comes here. It all depends on what sort of level he'll be running at over what trip. The trip is still a question mark. After the Greyful, I felt, he really wants a 1 mile 4. Because he didn't really quicken as I expected. But then he picked up an injury. So is he a mile 2 horse? Is he a mile 4 horse? Is he a mile 6 horse? I don't know. The sister stayed a mile 6. The sister used to run against Wonderful Tonight. It's for us to find out. But hopefully he'll be competing at the very top level. And he belongs to a couple of Australian owners. It goes without saying that he might venture out to Australia a bit later in his career.
Yeah, obviously with the eye-watering prize money out there. Did you see the prize money for the Golden Eagle?
I didn't really look.
Wow. It was a 7.5 furlong event, and it was £1 million for third. They were paying astronomical sums, sort of 100,000 for 8. Just incredible. I've not seen sums like that ever. That was eye-watering. So if they have Australian owners, they might be eyeing something up later down the line. Right, coming on to your other tweet, which caused more outrage in the Twitter community. When you said, what's all this bullshit RE watering? You called it out and you said, look, they do it in France, it's to produce safe ground, etc., etc. What is the problem? But obviously, you come into fire from punters that obviously like the green desert lines, maybe, for betting horses, and want the Exceed and Excels and the sort of fast ground lines, getting frustrated midsummer, David, when courses are producing good to soft when we're in the middle of heatwave.
Nah, I mean, they call it good to soft, but it never really is, to be fair. I think it's proper good ground. You'll always find one that will prove you that you're wrong and what have you on Twitter, which is quite interesting sometimes. Everybody's for quick ground, to let the horses run on natural ground and what have you. You've had 3 months of field of 4 or 5 runners. If they think that, maybe they should do what they preach, you know. I got annoyed by the ground thing. Personally, I don't like to run on rattling ground. I don't have many horses that would handle it. Perhaps Keith Chorister does handle it, but I have very few horses in the yard that would handle it, and I only have a smallish yard. I'd rather have horses to go to war with than just knacker them because the ground is too quick. Some racecourses do a fantastic job and some don't really. I do believe that if every single racecourse was watered every day to good ground, you would have a lot less problems, you would have less non-runners, you would have bigger field, you would have more money coming into racing. Maybe it's a simplistic view, but that's mine anyway. I don't see that many non-runners in France. I defy anybody to go and see any trainer and ask them what's the ground like today. And I promise you that not many will be able to answer because this is just not a concern.
Do you think, though, that, say, overwatered ground, because they have to chuck a lot on throughout the summer, we've been getting really hot summers recently, and they have to chuck plenty on to keep it at what trainers would consider as a safe level. Is that particularly safe? But when they knock the top off, say, Newmarket July Court, is that a good look, or does that not bother you? I mean, do any of your horses come back injured ever, like muscle strains or anything, on, say, strangely watered ground? Have you ever had instances of that?
I've had 1 or 2 issues, but whether it was due to that or not, I don't know. Frankly, I'm only a rookie gardener, and I have a tiny little greenhouse. I didn't get that many tomatoes this year. So.
Yeah.
The thing that drives me mad on Twitter or even on TV, like everybody's an expert. I'm not. Sometimes I find it idiotic that the more you water, the more it's dangerous. I'm like, okay. That, to me, it just doesn't make any sense. I don't know.
Punters feel differently because obviously it's a different section of the sport. Punters obviously want to bet on horses that will act under certain conditions, like I pointed out with and sires and certain breeding lines. You said you'd looked at dams, pedigrees. Look at the Green Desert line, and Green Deserts generally want quick ground. That's bore out in many analysis I've run.
There's quick and quick. Like, in my opinion, you break more record on good ground than you do on proper, fast, firm, good to firm. In my opinion, anyway, because horses let themselves down.
That's interesting you say that.
I'm not actually saying that they should run on soft every day. It's not the case. A genuine, lovely, good ground like you might find at York, Sandown, or, places like that is absolutely marvelous. I do understand what you're saying about punters, but we're talking about a normal year when you have a shower every once in a while, which is great. But when you have a dry spell of 4 or 5 months, watering every so often is just not good enough because you will cause problem by doing that. But if you do water a little bit every day, personally, as I've said, I'm a rookie gardener. I'm probably not even a good one. It would make sense for me to go to my greenhouse and put a little bit of water every day to make sure that the plants actually keep on living rather than let them dry for 7 days and then water for 3 and then dry for 7. And
yes, I do. I think that makes far more sense. Mm-hmm. You look at Michael Prosser, say, at Newmarket, and I think because we had like 39, 40 degrees, he did nothing and then put on 10 mil, just in sudden bursts. And I think that's when you get that horrible top where...
I think so, yeah.
They're knocking the top off. And John, you've often remarked on this, and you're amazed that there ain't more horses possibly returning injured on that ground. And don't forget, this year, we've had abandoned meeting for slipping. So clearly the clerks have got a difficult job, but at the same time, some probably aren't doing as well as others, John.
Well, the thing is as well, you never actually see anything in the farm book to say it was good to firm watered. It's only good to firm in the farm book.
Yeah.
So you've no point of reference really to see if, when you're looking back, to see if horses have acted well on watered ground or unwatered good to firm ground.
I do agree with David though, right, about horses letting themselves down. There's probably a case in point actually today at the time of recording. Newbury over the National Hunt had a lot of withdrawals today because of the good to firm ground. Times were slow and trainers were complaining the ground was too quick. I get it. I do understand that point of view. So it's an interesting topic, but the trainers are certainly winning anyway because most clerks are producing the ground that the trainers want, which is, I suppose, as an industry, if you train for an expensive owner, you've got an expensive horse that obviously David's just bought some from our corner. You don't want 100,000 purchase running on rattling quick when you've been told good ground.
That's it, exactly. But I mean, whether he's expensive or not, it doesn't matter. He's an animal, and your duty is to look after their welfare. And it's irrelevant whether they're expensive or not expensive. You know, you want them to come home in one piece, don't you?
Interesting. Just on the watering then, what tracks do you like to run your horses, David? You wouldn't be worried about the state of the conditions. What are your favourite tracks to say run a debutant?
I don't want to be unfair. Goodwood, Sandown are two of the best, and York, you know, in my opinion, three of the best.
That's interesting. They are three variances. I had a spat with Andrew Cooper earlier this year with regards to his watering policy, how in some years eclipses are running on a lot faster ground with no problems, whatever, and then suddenly he produces a lot slower ground for whatever reason.
That depends if I have a runner or not.
Well, exactly. I suppose there is a bit of that in it as well. But you say two tracks there, Sandown and Goodwood, that do chuck quite a lot on.
Because they have to, because it's undulating. They don't have a problem. That's the thing. They don't have a choice. They have to put the water down. Otherwise, they would become too quick / dangerous. So as they have to, and that suits me really well. Perhaps some tracks are limited also financially regarding watering and whatever. You're talking about Group 1 tracks. They are bound to do a better job than the smaller tracks in the country.
Do you think undulations have got a lot to do with it as well then?
Yeah, undulation will make the ground uneven. During a heat wave, the ground is likely to have a little bit more give in the dips and be dry at top of the undulations. So by nature, sound like I know something, but it's just logical. During a heat wave, it will be dry at the top of the hills and a bit softer in the dips.
It's fascinating listening, to obviously a trainer's angle. So it's nice to take on board. So listeners, what do you think to that? Anyway, coming to the best part of the show now, where we talk shop. David Menuisier has been promoted to head of the BHA. He's king for a day. He's allowed to do anything, what he likes in the sport to make it better. So let's touch upon a few things.
It's hardly a dream come true, but yeah.
I'm sure you do brilliantly. For humour alone, you'd be the funniest head of the BHA we've had anyway. Someone with a personality. Anyway, the bloodstock breeding, is there anything you'd change in that arena?
Well, yeah, I think you have to limit the stallions. Some stallions got too many mares. I think by limiting the number of mares for each stallion will obviously give some lesser stallions a bit more of a chance to prove themselves. I think it's unlikely to happen, obviously, because the big powers own the best stallions, and I don't think that's something that's going to change in my lifetime. I think that would be quite a relevant thing to do. Perhaps be more selective, maybe declaring the bleeders, declaring horses that have had operations and that sort of things, and perhaps for the strength of the breed, it may be better to avoid those. I think stallions that have bled, stallions that have had throat surgeries and what have you should have a special mention so people are aware. To me, it should be avoided, yeah. The Japanese do awfully well, but I'm pretty sure that I read somewhere that they are very selective. On the mares and the stallions, they refuse to breed from horses that have had problems. Even maybe leg injuries. You know, if you retire through injury, maybe be a bit more open on what the injury was and whatever. That would revolutionize the breeding industry. It's obviously utopic, but I think these things should be thought of, really.
Do you think it's a bit strange when the likes of Coolmore at Godolphin, literally with their best, say, 3-year-old colts, have never had a wind up? or anything done.
Look, yeah, it is a bit strange, but look, I don't know how that's it. Those guys have all the reins in hand, so it will never change, will it?
Something that you'd love to implement, but probably impossible, like most of it.
But you would, I mean, if you really think about the breed, capital B, then you would, yeah. But then we're talking money now, so the commercial aspect will always be more relevant than the fun of the sport or the sport generally, I would say.
Some really good points there. Funding of the sport, David. How would you tackle that?
You know, you need somebody brave that will get enough money, enough return to racing. Look, the racing industry should be raising 300-400 million a year to be able to deliver a great job. We all know that the French system is amazing, the Australian system is amazing, Japanese system is amazing, the system in Hong Kong. And here, unfortunately, it's not the same, is it? What makes me laugh, it's every year they publish tax paid by Dennis Coates or whatever, from Bet365, and he pays whatever 150 million of pounds of tax a year, which in itself is really putting salt in the wound of racing, really, because if she pays that much tax, she could give more back to racing, surely.
Well, the Irish model is the government actually put money back into the sport. Like you've just highlighted there, that's a good point, actually. It's something I've never thought about, in the fact that the tax that, say, these big entities pay into the system is all well and good. But if the government also aren't then helping what is a floundering product in terms of the amount of fixtures, the kind of money that UK racing pays winning connections compared to France, Australia, the USA, well, any country in the world, really. And I think that's something I've never really considered, in that I've always expected it to come from bookmakers, and bookmakers should pay more, but maybe bookmakers are paying plenty, but into the treasury. So maybe that's some way racing could maybe go to the government and say, look, if it wasn't for our industry, this taxation, it wouldn't be in your treasury. So maybe that's an angle.
No, but that's it. Exactly. If some of those taxes were going back into racing people would pay more tax and so on and so forth. On the grand scheme of things, I don't think the government would lose out.
Exactly. If you invest in the industry, like you've just said, more people are involved, more staff's involved, owners get involved because there's more money in the game. As an owner myself, I've stopped because it's just not viable. Yeah. It's not financially viable. I mean, it's never financially viable anyway, but even so now, it's such a drainer, if you like, on your finances. So that's a really good point. I've never really thought of it like that. Okay, so going to the fixture list then. You're in charge of the fixture. We'd all cut it, wouldn't we? We'd all make changes. But with the legalities, we can't do that because the racecourses have got the fixture rights. The EU said that no racecourses can race pretty much when they want, but the BHA can't control the fixture list anymore when they can and can't race. What would you try and negotiate with the tracks?
It's abnormal that each track decide of their fixture anyway. I think it should be centralized, first of all, to make it more fair. I mean, as a trainer, I don't have the ultimate knowledge on fixtures and what have you, but sometimes you look for races and you find the same race on the same day at two different race courses, and then find a thing for 4 weeks. And you're like, come on, seriously. It's frustrating. I can't really comment on the number of fixtures. I think it will be irrelevant because I'm not in the know enough to really pass a comment. What I really find is that the BHA generally lacks flexibility. They should be much more flexible because during the summer, the grounds were pretty dry and it was really hot and people decided not to run too much and what have you. So when the weather changed in the autumn, there were a lot of entries in each race. You know, even some maiden at Kempton or what have you, you had 45 entered. They would only take 14 runners. And some of those races were not splitting for some reason because they were run in the evening or what have you. I think they should be much more flexible and allowed to have 10 races on the day if you have enough horses to fill them out. They should be able to split in 2 or even 3 divisions at times. And some of the other races, should probably be scrapped if they don't have enough entry. I also feel that you should be able to supplement in any race in the country because you would promote the number of runners. If you see there aren't many horses declaring, or you should be able to supplement even at the declaration stage. 2 days before the race. You should be able to supplement. You pay a big price, maybe 10% of the prize money, but you should be able to supplement any horse.
That's a really good idea, because whilst they've got the system in place of when there's sort of, is it less than 6 runners or 8 runners? I can't remember. You can enter.
Reopen.
Reopen. But like you say, what happens if it's a late decision? It's like, we'd actually like to run in this, but then you've not entered at the first instance.
But especially when you have a weather change. Sometimes you have a freak weather, get a lot of rain when it wasn't forecast. Oh, geez, I forgot to enter my horse. Well, at least, boom, you could supplement at 2 days. And therefore, instead of having 4 or 5 runners, you might have 8 or 9 that were afterthoughts, but I think more often than not, it would work really well.
I guess it's a really, really good idea. What do you think to the idea of maybe having more dynamic fixtures where races aren't decided until they analyse the pool of horses that are available and in training and ready to run? You click at green button, this horse is in training, ready to run. So they can analyse that, then they can formulate the races suited to those trips of those horses, etc., etc. Then you're probably going to get fuller fields, I would think.
I think they had an equivalent system in California when I was there nearly 20 years ago now. You'll have a card of 7 races, you enter in 9 races, and then they only keep the 7 that have the fields. You have to try and avoid those races with only a few runners. If the same sort of conditions come up, 5 days later, people will have to pull their finger out to enter more horses for the race to run. You know what I mean? So you have a card of 7 and 2 extra races, but if you have 18 entered in one and 25 in the other, they take priority over the ones with the lesser entry.
Indeed. Love it.
I think it will work well.
Yeah, I like these ideas. Okay, 2 more subjects before we close this podcast. First thing, Racecourse Clientele. Do we think that racing promotes the sport in the way that we want it to grow, or are we letting down the sort of betting fraternity, or basically pop concert? Is this a good thing? Does it bother you?
Nah, look, it doesn't bother me, because obviously anything that people is trying to do to promote the sport is a good thing. So no, I'm not against it. Maybe there should be more explanations about how racing works, how the betting works, because they come in for the concert. Some of them, you can see them, they're getting smashed in their car and they just walk into the race course after the last race. So they don't actually go to the races at all. Maybe there should be more done for those guys to not get smashed in their car and go there a bit more sober and enjoy the day rather than just go for the concert. So I think the idea is not a bad one. The way it's done could be improved. Yeah, you should have a few kiosks like in an airport to be able to guide you through the race course and how the meeting pans out.
I think one of the earliest sights for me when I went racing as a youngster was the horses themselves. And I'd got a passion like you, John. You know, when you went racing, it wasn't about bouncy castles and face painting. You were shown the horse. Your paddock knowledge now, I think, is impressive. So that's developed over time. Your gut feeling has got better and better. And that's because of your upbringing where you was taught, to go and look at the horses. And I think that's such a shame now that we don't bring through youngsters to actually appreciate the horse.
Yeah.
They're just magnificent specimens. And I think it's such a shame that we don't promote that more by education. For example, you could have a program give out free to kids that explained the joint, the fetlocks, everything about them.
But if you take them to the races and you stick them on a bouncy castle, they're not going to get to know I like horses, are they?
No. Absolutely not. And that's possibly where we could do more and create more horse lovers rather than actual detractors from the sport, which is all we seem to be getting in the modern times of, it's cruel, ban this, ban that. And it's just so far from the truth. But this is where we're at. It's frustrating as horse fanatics. Anyway, one final subject for you to tackle, David. It's the old thorny one, the one where no one goes, of drugs and drug testing, drugs in the sport. How rife is it, David, in your opinion?
I don't know, really, I mean, I don't really use many drugs. I
love how that come out. That was brilliant.
What do you say about this? I'm not
Right, okay, so I'll start us off, right? There's different things. You've medication, obviously, that improve the horse's health and well-being. That say if the horse has got like muscle problems, joint problems, you will treat a horse, and you know sometimes if you have to use something that is on the ban list or whatever, you can't run for X amount of days. There's that sort of stuff, which for me is just welfare of the horse. I haven't got a problem with that, but obviously, in the past, was it the Rosses in France? They got arrested by the police. I presume there's a legal case going on there. There was the Seth Fishman case.
There was a little bit more to it than treating a headache.
Oh, yeah. There was the one that Seth Fishman in the United States, that was brought before a court and he was tried and prosecuted. He had actually developed drugs that could defeat detection even in the life period. Those drugs were on record as being sold to all different parts of the world: UK, Ireland, Dubai, Japan. They went all over the place. So I'm thinking, how much has Ado McGuinness got left? If you can go to Godolphin's backyard and give them a good hiding, you've got some good tackle. Anyway, no, it's unfair for me to ask you to comment on things like that with your fellow counterparts. Jim Bolger tried to, though, once. He got the cold shoulder off of you.
I don't know, it is hard to believe that there's much going on in the UK because they are being tested regularly. I hear you. I mean, obviously, the best one, this one or the worst one will use things that are not detectable and what have you. It's just such a difference to what we are trying to achieve. We try and give time to horses rather than fill them up with medication and painkillers and what have you. I think a break is probably the best treatment and the first treatment of choice anyway. Giving a break and respecting them, basically. Yeah. But I understand that it's not really what you're talking about.
Coincidentally, the Irish have done very well at Cheltenham festivals now for a long time. Though, of course, we do also know that the Irish do have the best stock in terms from the point-to-point fields. But then again, you've got the likes of Paul Hennessy that train about 3 horses and end up winning the Coral Cup by about 15 lengths on the bridle. It literally is a minefield going there. I know it is for you. I'm not going to push you, but there's always going to be a problem, like in any sport, athletics, football even, cricket, any sport where you can get a higher level of living, earnings. You are going to utilise the edges that some morally won't do it, but some obviously.
But that's it. It depends on each person, really. And depends on if you can look at yourself in the mirror in the morning or not, That's the thing.
And I think our listeners have certainly garnered an opinion. Well, I know I have. And this has been an absolute delight for me and John to listen to you. So I thank you very much for this.
It was a pleasure.
It's gone splendidly well. And honestly, you've gone massively up in my estimations. So thank you, David Menuisier. Listeners, I hope you enjoyed this. We certainly did. So look forward to the next trainer file. We've upgraded from Stuart Williams, Gay Kellaway and Daniel Kubler to the multiple Group 1 winning trainer, David Menuisier.
Where do you go next?
Exactly.